Students interrupting you while you're talking is probably one of the most frustrating things to deal with as a teacher. I can remember years, beginning of the school year, when certain students would interrupt just constantly. It seems like all day long. And so today's video, we're going to talk about how to fix this, how to put a stop to it. And the good news is that it's easy. This is a strategy or a series of strategies that have been proven to be really, really effective. And I know they're going to work great for you. Before we get started, please do me a favor and subscribe to this channel. Give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment below. I would really appreciate it. So the first step is to always have a rule. Have a raise your hand rule. So if you've seen the previous videos, I'll leave a link below in the description about the classroom rules that I recommend. And if you're a high school teacher, these are the rules I recommend beginning with. A high school teacher will probably have more than just the 4 rules that we recommend for elementary through middle school. But in any event, the first rule should be raise your hand before speaking or leaving your seat. Or I should say it should be one of the 4 rules. Raise your hand before speaking or leaving your seat, because in order to enforce this behavior, you have to have a rule against it. The next step, and this is especially in the beginning of the year, but really, if this is a problem that's happening mid-year, you'll want to reteach the rule or create the rule if you don't have it. But the next one is that you have to define for students what the rule means. Just saying it isn't enough. And in this case, it has to be defined as they're raising their hand and waiting to be called on. And it's a really good idea to model this, to sit in a student seat and model how to do this, how to wait for the teacher to call on you. And the key there is verbally call on you. And we're going to go over that here in a second with number 4. Number 3 is to practice it as a class. And this is a great idea in the beginning of the school year. It can also be something fun to do. You can ask your students to come up with a silly question to ask you. Or it can be maybe ask questions about your likes and dislikes. Things like that. And then you'll have students raise their hand, and then you'll call on them. You can also do a sort of a mini lesson about something related to your classroom. Maybe you're telling them about a particular procedure, and you'll say, hey, I'm going to do this quick 5-minute lesson, and then I'm going to take questions. And then this gives your class a chance to practice it. Now, you'll have some students who during this practice time, they won't be able to control themselves. Or you may have some of those students. And the reason why there are kids who do this is because they've had teachers who allow it. It's still surprising to me that there are teachers who just allow kids to call out at any time they want. And it's absolutely crazy. And I've watched classes, I've observed classes like this, and it's complete chaos, and it's not fair. And that's the other thing is when we explain why we have that rule, we do it because we want to make it fair. Every student should have access to ask a question, not just those who are more bold and who call out. And we explain that calling out jumps in the front of the line. It's disrespectful to the rest of the class. It's not fair to anyone else. So that's all part of when you're teaching your rules, and I really recommend checking out those previous videos on how to teach your classroom management plan in the beginning of the school year. We have a couple of those. But anyway, so you're going to practice, and this is a way of not necessarily creating the discipline not to call out. It's just to be clear about what the rule is in the class and to practice what it looks like. You still may have students who have some emotional control issues and are going to call out and interrupt you. And that's where we get to number 4. Part of that is, of course, you're going to enforce that rule. You absolutely have to enforce the rule. So if students, if they break that rule, you can't give them a reminder. Even though calling out seems like it's such a minor misbehavior, it's not. It really disrupts your teaching and disrupts the classroom, especially if you're really enthusiastic and you're right in the middle of something and you get going and you're telling a story or you're bringing interesting things in, and these kids, they'll interrupt you and they'll ruin the lesson. They'll take you off your game. They can make you angry, and it affects the learning of the rest of the class. So it is a big deal. You have to make it a big deal, and you have to enforce a consequence per your classroom management plan. Okay, so number 5 gets into a particular strategy with those students who have a proclivity for yelling out, that do have some emotional control issues they're dealing with. The good news is that this fixes it, these next 3. So it's a 3-part strategy that works incredibly, incredibly well. And I recommend you use it every single time you ask for questions or you open the class to questions. You give a lesson, you're checking for understanding, and you're opening the floor to questions. It kind of reminds me, I didn't include this, but it kind of reminds me to make sure that your students understand when it is okay and isn't okay to ask a question. If you're in the middle of a lesson, you don't want a hand up. This is a topic we can go into in a future video, but it's important that you say, hey, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to teach this really cool lesson. When it's over, then I'll take some questions. Before I begin, are there any questions that I need to answer now? Ask them now because I want you focused, and I'm going to have you participate in a certain way during the lesson, and I don't want any questions. That sort of thing. Kids are really good if you're clear with them. Kids are really good about following that kind of thing. Anyway, if you do have students, despite that, call out and interrupt you, that kind of thing, or if you open the floor to questions and you have students call out, sometimes a student will say something really smart or they'll have a great question. You have to be tough enough to enforce anyway. Sometimes it'll be your best student. You have to enforce, okay? Really, really important. Okay, so what is this strategy that you're going to use every time you open the floor to questions? Well, the first thing is when you see a hand up or hands up in the classroom, you're going to choose a student, maybe it's the first one who has their hand up, and you're going to make eye contact. You're going to make eye contact with that student. You're not going to call on them. You're going to make eye contact and wait. Okay, that's the second one, is you're going to pause. You're going to make eye contact and pause. And the reason for this is that there becomes, after a while, teachers are so quick to call on students, there becomes a rhythm to it. The teacher looks at the student starts talking. And then you're in a gray area about whether the students, were they called on or not? That's why you have to define it as waiting to be called on by the teacher. You don't want to get into this thing because otherwise you're avoiding even looking at your students because you're afraid you look at them, they'll start calling out. So instead, you want to get in the habit of always looking at that student and pausing. That pause, that second, especially if you look at that student who's had a problem with this, that's where they learn that discipline to hold it. And they know it, and they know you're looking at them, and it's sort of a challenge, and they're like, okay, I can do this. And they look at you, and they hold it, and that's when they learn. That's when it disappears. That's when they develop that, and it doesn't take long. Again, even if they've called out in every class they've had before you, even if they yell out at the dinner table at home or whatever, it's quick. They'll know with you, you can't do that. They can't do that. Third thing, really important, is that you're going to look away from that student. This puts it at an even higher level because they really want to participate, right? Not everyone can participate every time. And this student has to learn that, and this is going to develop that discipline and that impulse control even greater, and it's also going to help them with misbehavior too. So you look at the student, you make eye contact, and then you look away, and you do the same thing with another student. Now the wonderful thing about this pause, and the reason why you need to do it anyway, is when you ask a question, you want everyone a chance to be thinking about what the answer is in their head, even if they don't want to share. This is normal. But what happens is if you call on someone right away, or if you look at someone and they call out the answer, it eliminates that ability for students to think about what the correct answer is. And then when someone does call out an answer, when you call on them, they can compare how close they were to that answer. And then how, well, maybe they were thinking something different. And this is how learning develops. And so you always want to have that pause anyway. So eventually, of course, you'll kind of look around and then you'll decide who you'd like to hear from. And this is up to you, obviously, and you can mix it up or whatever. You can go back to that student who is struggling and say thank you, and move on. But if you do this every single time, you'll have a really disciplined class, and it transfers to your lessons. They won't raise their hand, they won't call out because they've learned this. They've learned the importance of waiting their turn, of learning. They learn that a lot of other people have some really interesting things to say. It allows them to listen what other people have to say and not be so fixated on their own answer. Okay? I would say I hope this helps, but I know it's going to. It's going to be amazing. I did want to leave you with one more thing, and it's something that we'll cover in a future video. But if you don't want to have those situations where, let's say you want everyone to be really thinking about whatever question that you pose to them. Maybe you've heard this before, but you can use a set of index cards or playing cards. Put each student's name, one on each card, and say, well, today I'm going to use the cards, and get out the cards and shuffle them, and then call on who's ever on top. And it's a great way to keep students on their toes, and I'm not suggesting that you use it all the time, but it is good to pull it out once in a while. It's a different way of getting kids to think because without their hand up, they're not focused on just one thing. They can listen to others. And the other thing is that anyone can be called on, and so They have to come up with an answer on their own. My experience, students have gotten really good at this. I don't recommend it the first few weeks of the school year. You want them to get more comfortable with your class and confident. And as your students are improving academically and they have this confidence, you can bring out those index cards. Okay, hope this helps. Hope you're having a great week. See you next time.